Hi, welcome to our presentation today on how to identify the perfect right fit customer for your business. Really appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. I really know that this is going to help you move your business forward, which is ultimately every business owner's goal. My name is Tom Alesic, and I am the founder and president of EZMarketing. Now, we've been in Lancaster, Pennsylvania for this is our 24th year helping small business owners grow their business and really drive uh, results through marketing, whether that's through a great website or maybe it's search engine optimization, maybe it's Google ads, Facebook ads. Everything we really do really revolves heavily around digital because well, that's kind of how the world works right now is all really focused on digital. So you may be wondering, well, what will I learn today? You're going to learn a ton of stuff and we're going to have some practical applications for you. So in our presentation today, we're going to talk about the benefits of finding that right fit customer. We're also going to learn the difference between a target market and an ideal customer. They're very similar and people kind of get them confused and think this will help you clarify more of your messaging. We're also going to talk about what are the steps that you can go through to really find who that ideal customer is in that target market. And we're just not going to talk about it. I'm going to give you a workbook, and you can see on the screen here the download to get that workbook that's going to go along with today's conversation. So we're going to go through some practical exercises so that you can clearly define it. So by the end of this presentation, you should have a good, clear idea of who that target market and ideal customer is for you. And then obviously take some time and make sure you really finalize and figure out that, did what you put together today, does that really feel right to you? So who is that right fit customer? I can tell you who it's not. And this is a common mistake that small business owners make. I'll say, well, who's your customer? Well, Tom, my customer is anybody who will buy from me and give me money. Well, that's not really who it is, right? We've all gone through and we've had that absolute nightmare customer. And most of the time, that customer is a nightmare for us because they're just not a good fit, right? Maybe they're in the wrong industry or they have kind of the wrong belief system. They just don't match with our business. So a lot of times I look at it and, answers that people give me this question of who's your nightmare customer, right? They're just really difficult to work with. They don't pay their bills. They're impossible to please, and they're just really not a good fit. So think of it like this: like if the phone rings and you see that that Tom Alesic's calling you, and you go, "Oh, not this guy." Like that's your nightmare customer. And obviously, we want less of them, and we want more of the customers that we love and that love us back. All right. So that's really why do we spend so much time identifying that right customer? So I've got a couple reasons here that I want to walk through to help you really think hard about how does this all impact everything else? Like, why is it so important to even take the time to figure it out? Okay, for starters, it sets your entire strategy for how you're going to market. So, for example, here, right, we sell marketing services. Now, we could sell them to Fortune 500 companies who are nationwide, or we could sell them to small businesses in central PA. Now, do you think we'd have a different marketing strategy based on those two types of businesses? Yep, obviously we would, and we'd have different size marketing budgets to go after those customers as well, right? Also, you will figure out that you can serve that customer better if you really understand them. So we will be able to tailor our products and services directly to that specific type of customer. Now, remember, if your mom probably taught you this a long time ago, which is you're not going to be able to please everyone all the time. So if you can really figure out who you can please, then that's going to help you with your marketing. Also, you're going to be more relatable. And in terms of marketing, this is probably one of the most critical factors here, is that when your audience or your customer feels like you get them, you really understand who they are and what's important to them. And when you're having a conversation with them and they're just constantly saying, yeah, you totally understand me, you're going to be able to craft a marketing message that they love and that will attract them to your business. So here's an example, right? If we narrow down marketing for, let's say you're a shoe store, well, we can narrow it down even further and say, listen, I really want to sell more sneakers. Or you could say, you know what? I want to sell running sneakers to people who are avid runners, right? They run multiple 5Ks a year, maybe they run marathons. Now, do you think the messaging that you would use to a marathon runner would be very different than me who just wants to buy a pair of sneakers that look good, right, with my cargo pants? So the better we can understand our audience, the more we can really narrow down our focus and give them really great, clear messaging. And finally, one of the challenges that we all have is we don't have these unlimited budgets. So the clearer you are on your messaging, the more you're not going to waste all your money and your time going after a customer who's just not a good fit for you, right? So if we cast that net way too wide, it's going to get really, really expensive, and we're going to end up wasting just so much time and resources. Now, there's two things that I want you to look at. One is your target market, and the other is your ideal customer. So the target market, that's a group of potential customers who may be interested in your products or services. So think of this like this is more demographics, where they live, what industry they're in. This is more bigger picture kind of definitions. Now, your ideal customer is the type of person in that group of people who is most likely a good fit. So now we're looking at things like beliefs or personalities or attitudes or things that they want or things that they need. So two distinct areas. Now, you can kind of think of this like dating. I always try to make as simple as an example as I possibly can. So my target market, let's say that I really love tall blondes who are around my age. That's the target market, right? But will any tall blonde really work for me? Or, does she need to love kids and want to travel and have a great sense of humor? So the ideal customer is the more detailed, feely, touchy part of figuring out who your customer is. So it goes beyond that I just like tall blondes, and actually I don't, I like short brunettes, but it's the type with the target market is the bigger picture, and the ideal customer is more of the good, feel good, that's the connection piece of who that customer is for you. So how do you go about identifying that target market, right? Great, there's a whole universe of people that you could market to, but we want to narrow it down to a specific group of people who have a similar problem that you can solve. At the end of the day, no matter what kind of business you're in the business of solving somebody's problem. So how do you figure out what the problems are that your customers have? So let me just give you a few examples. So like if you're a plumbing company, you might say the problem that we solve is they have leaky pipes and they need somebody reliable and they need somebody to show up fast, right? That could be the problem that you're solving. Maybe you have an insurance agency and the problem that you're solving is it's hard for people to find affordable insurance with the right kind of coverage that they want. For us, EZMarketing, the problem that we solve is like you feel like you're just wasting money on marketing. And the worst problem is you do not have the time to deal with this. So that's the problem that we solve. So I know you downloaded the workbook. I want you to go to page 3 of the workbook, and I'm going to pull that up here so that you can see what page 3 looks like. So here's your workbook, and I've got some just general information that we just covered. And then on page 3, you can jot down right in here, what's the biggest problem that you solve for your customers? So you can hit pause on the video if you want to take the time and really jot down what those problems are. Okay, now we need to narrow down our target market. So why do I want you to narrow it down? And this is, business owners just kind of freak out about this. They say, well, oh my gosh, Tom, if I narrow it down, aren't I just pigeonholing myself? No, you're not, because you could have multiple targets that you go after. So some people will leave the target market a little bigger, and some people will narrow it down to maybe a specific industry that they're going after, right? But think of this like the more specific you can get, the better your messaging and your marketing will become, right? All the things that we talked about at the beginning. So if you had a brain tumor, right, are you going to go to your family doctor, or maybe just go to a general surgeon, or would you say, you know what, my brain's kind of important enough, I'd like to go to a neurosurgeon? So obviously, let's hope you said, you know what, I'm going to go to a neurosurgeon if I have a brain tumor. And that's what focusing your target market really is. So we want to start with picking one, right? Oops, I think I went too far. No, I didn't. Okay. So how do you narrow this down? So if you sell business to business, you might narrow this down by maybe the type of industry you sell to, right? So do you sell to manufacturers? Do you sell to funeral homes? Do you sell to insurance agencies? Who do you sell to as an industry? Then you might say, well, listen, I focus on businesses who have X number of employees or have annual revenues of this dollar range, right? So because we focus on small businesses, right, we focus on businesses who don't do, $2 billion in sales, right? We're going to focus on some smaller revenues there. You might say, maybe it's about length of time in business, right? That you're great with startups, or startups are an absolute nightmare for you, right? So you want to define maybe the length of time they've been in business. If you're selling, business to consumer, maybe it's age, maybe it's gender, maybe there's some ethnicity that you're really good at solving their problems. Maybe it's income level or education, or maybe you only go after single men that are between the ages of 25 and 35. Whatever it is, those are some of the questions that you can look at. Now, things that apply to both areas, whether it's B2B or B2C, would be things like geography, maybe it's price point, right? So in other words, are you selling a Toyota or are you selling an Aston Martin, right? Those people will have different profiles of the problem that you're solving based on the type of price point that you're at. And maybe your target is really very specific on solving a very, very specific problem that you have. So you can look at those things as well. So within that, you can say, well, what's a really good target for me? So once you jot it down, then you can say, well, listen, are they able to pay you? Is it a large enough group, right? If there are only 5 people or 5 companies in that target group, that might not be the best target market for you. They need to be really easy to identify. And sometimes this is where it gets tricky. Like, how do we find this group? And most importantly, you need to really be able to make a real difference in their lives or their business, because the more compelling that reason is, the easier it is to attract that to you. So now let's go back to our workbook that you have, right? So we're still on page 3, right? I want you to take a look here at the things that we just covered and say what are those things, jot those down, and then figure out what is the target market in here. So you might have written down an industry, right? You might say, listen, I really want to go after plumbing companies. I really want to go after single moms. Whatever that is, go ahead and jot down some of that information here on page 3. Okay, so now that you have that, you're going to say, well, which of these target markets should you target? So ask yourself some of these types of questions. What are the products and services that they would need from me? How profitable is that group of people? Is the market size large enough? Can I identify who I would go after? Like, can I research that? Or I love this one, like, is there so much competition that this is just an absolute waste of our money, right? Is it too competitive for us? And are you familiar with that market? The more familiar you are, the better you're going to be able to communicate with them. Now, that's not to say that you can't get familiar with them. And of course, did you make a real difference? Now, what I want you to do next is I want you to select 3 of those potential markets. And then on page 4, right, you can review the questions and then fill out the grid on page 5, right? So we filled out a potential for our business here in Target Market 1, right? So we said, listen, we're really good at helping local construction companies and building companies. And then what products do they typically buy? We filled that in, right? Are they profitable? Is it a large enough audience, right? And we went through these questions, and you can kind of rate these, but take a couple target markets and go through the exercise and decide, is this one worth going after for you? All right, I think you're going to have a lot of fun doing that one. It's sometimes it's really hard to figure it out, and you're going to feel like you're pulling your hair out. But when you're done with this, you're going to be super happy that you did this. All right, next, let's identify the ideal customer within that target market. All right, so I want you to put yourselves in that person's shoes, right? There's my not running shoes. All right, so who are these people? What do they need? What are they interested in? And kind of what are their behaviors? And sometimes people, if you're selling business to business, sometimes people say, yeah, but I sell to a business. But you don't. You sell to a person within that business. So I'd like you to consider the idea of really coming up with what that ideal profile is. And the more you can see who this person is and your team can see who this person is, the better off you're going to be. So you can create some kind of generalized customer information. You can do some research and gather some data. And I really want you to understand how they make decisions, right? So first, I like you to avoid the real fluffy kind of stuff, right? So we have customer Jane Doe, and Jane is between 35 and 50 years old. She likes to travel and she drinks Starbucks coffee. Okay, now you picture Jane, right? Now I want you to picture Power Executive Jane, and she has 15 years industry experience. She racks up 200,000 plus air miles a year, and she is a personal assistant who manages everything, including her coffee, right? Do you have a better picture when I describe Jane in more detail, right? Of course you do, absolutely. So that's the level of detail that I really we're going to get to in how do we know that we really know who that is. So I want you to do a little research, and I know this takes time, but I just don't want you to assume that you really understand that you're selling to Power Executive Jane, right? And you can do this by interviewing your customers, right? What do they like about you? What do they not like about your industry? What's their problems day to day, right? So interview your customers. You can also ask your salespeople and your customer service team. You can probably, dig for any kind of analytics. Maybe there's some stuff on your website that might give you some analytical information. Maybe there's some industry specific things that you can dig into. You can obviously survey your customers and ask them questions that will help you figure out, who are these people? You can obviously read your own reviews, social media stuff, look at what your competition is doing to kind of really dig in for this research piece. All right, so we have good fit customers and bad fit customers, right? So I always look at this from the standpoint of think of the customers that you love working with. Why do you love them, right? And then think of the customers that you really don't like working with and what makes them just so difficult for you to work with. Now we're going to go to page 7 of your workbook. Right, we've got some more information here so that you can read it after the fact. And so I want you to write down clients you love working with and why you love working with. You can even write their name down. Sometimes it helps me if I think of the exact person I'm thinking of and what it is that I really like about helping them with their marketing. And then make a list of the people that you work with that you really like, you wish they didn't work with you, right? Because it's just not a good fit. And what is it about that customer that you just makes them a bad fit, right? For us, somebody who's a bad fit for us is somebody who really doesn't value marketing, or really believes it's an absolute waste of money and a necessary evil. Those aren't really good customers for us. So that's just an idea of, who do you write down in that list of customers. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and jot that information down on your sheet. All right, now that you've got that down, we're going to build your ideal customer profile. So what does a day in that person's life looks like? So again, if you can think of one person that you love working with, what does their life look like? What are their goals? What are the problems that they face day in and day out? What questions do they typically ask you in the sales process? And how do they get their information? All right, so think about that piece. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to go back to our worksheet. And you're going to fill out the details in here, right? So, what kind of job do they have? What's their day in the life look like? What are their goals? And I'm just giving you little prompts so that you can do this on your own and really ask those questions of yourself and get a good feel for who are they. I love the what keeps them up at night, right? What's the stuff that really just gets under their skin and bothers them? What kind of questions or objections do they have, right? So fill that out. And then we even have, I have a customer profile for us. So I call him, so this is business owner Bob, right? So just to kind of give you an idea of how all this comes together. And I'm not going to read all this to you, but I do want you to take the time to read it, because the thing I want you to notice is kind of the attitude and sense that we put together with the words, so that we really feel who Bob is. So for the most part, Bob would be between 45 and 65 years old. He has some level of education. Mostly our customers are local. But Bob's really an entrepreneur, right? He manages the day-to-day part of the business. He's an expert at what he does. For the most part, he probably handles a lot of the sales, a lot of the marketing, a lot of just the HR. Like you're wearing a ton of hats. It's been his dream to own his own business. Before he even gets out of bed, like Bob's checking his emails and prioritizing his day. Really wants to grow his business. He knows marketing is important, but it's such a pain in the neck. He doesn't have the knowledge in it, and it's just frustrating to him. So go ahead and read through this, and that'll give you a sense as far as what kind of customer profile that we're really looking for here. So this is kind of the summation of what you've worked on so far. All right, so just to recap here, right? The perfect customer, they have to be part of that target market, right? And you've identified their needs and their goals, and that you have a real nice detailed customer profile. And you can clearly articulate what's the real problem that you solve for them day in and day out. So I hope this was super helpful for you. So if you want more help with this, your next steps would be to give us a call, go to our website, sign up. We'll give you a free consultation. So we'll meet and we'll talk about how do what were your questions on defining it, and were things too broad? What pieces were you kind of stumbling over? And we'll give you a full marketing strategy session so that we can really help you with your business. And our belief is that marketing should be easy, and that we're the people to help you make your marketing easy. So feel free to go to the website, give us a call, schedule that free marketing strategy session with me. I can't wait to meet you and help you grow your business, because I am just such a believer in small business and the value that you bring to your employees, your customers, and our community. So thank you so much for attending our workshop today, and I look forward to helping you grow your business.